Okay.
Welcome to Coaching for High Trust Culture. I would like to welcome everybody from across North America and actually around the world to our webinar. I'm pleased to have with me today Charles Feltman, author of The Thin Book of Trust. He is a professional certified coach, a member of the International Coaching Federation. He brings to us over 25 years of professional coaching, consulting, and facilitation experience. Welcome, Charles.
Thank you, Catherine. I am very happy to be here and talking about the twin subjects of coaching and trust with all of you. As an executive coach, I help leaders and leadership teams transcend their perceived limits, I guess you'd say, which in turn frees them to achieve their full measure of success and well-being. And over the years, most of my clients at some point or another have brought up a trust issue during our work together. Either they're finding it difficult to trust somebody they needed to trust in order to get good work done, or they realized someone important to their success didn't trust them, or both. So I've done a lot of work in the area of building trust and maintaining it, and when necessary, even rebuilding trust between individuals and teams in many different companies. One of my guiding principles for my work is that organizations are networks of conversations. When you look at a company from that perspective, it becomes obvious that the quality of conversations people have is key to the company's success. And strong trust is absolutely essential to our ability to have effective conversations. So trust, in one way or another, almost always comes up in the work I do. I'll just give you a quick example if I can. I've been working with a particular leader off and on for almost 12 years. Whenever he's been promoted into a new role with a greater authority or responsibility, he's asked me to coach him through the transition. In every instance, there's been some new trust issue he's had to confront. Right now, it's not a new position, but a new boss he needs to build trust with. And he came to me because he's having a hard time trusting her. But he knows if he can't find a way to do that, he won't continue to be a successful leader. So I'm going to just turn it back over to you, Catherine, for a moment to talk about the logistics here of the webinar so that all of you can get the most out of it. And then we'll move on into the actual content.
Excellent, Charles. Well, thank you so much. Right now, just to do a little maintenance, there's some people that can't want a call-in number. There's no call-in number for this webinar. It is through the webinar headset and speakers. So if you need to put a headset into your computer, it's broadcast through the computer. Secondly, Charles will be asking some questions and answers to get some feedback. And I just want everybody to know that in the upper left-hand corner, there's a Q&A box. That's where you can, you'll see the Q&A, and then it'll ask you to type in your answer. Right where the bottom part is, if you see where the arrow is, type your answer in here and push send. And then Charles will be able to see your responses. Thanks. Back to you, Charles, and looking forward to experiencing this webinar with you.
Great, thank you, Catherine. And I just want to mention that Q&A box, that little bar with the Q&A and other things on it, may actually be at the bottom of your screen for some of you. It seems to vary from place to place on people's screens. Okay, good. So let's go to the first slide, which is really the agenda. And before we get into the agenda, I want to just do a quick poll. So what I'd like to do is see what area of your organization you represent. You should see a polling thing on your screen, and if you just click your answer, looks like we've got answers coming in here. Catherine, let's see, I'm going to end this poll here right now. We'll take a look at, we have just a couple more people to vote. And they're probably the people on the phone, so they're not going to be able to. So I'm going to end the polling right now. And what we see here is looks like we have about 16% coaches, about 42% of you are in learning and development, another 42% in human resources, and then a few of you, about 19% in other. So a good spread of different kinds of, our different backgrounds, different roles that you play. It's great. Welcome to all of you. So our agenda is pretty simple. I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits of coaching, and then move into the benefits of trust and building trust in organizations, and then really spend the rest of the time focusing on how coaching can support building strong trust at work. So what are the benefits of coaching? And this is where I'd like you to use that Q&A box and type in for yourself your answer. What do you think are the benefits of coaching? Some of you may have experienced coaching in your own organization or in another organization you've worked in. Some of you may not have experienced coaching at all. But if you could just put in what you think the benefits of coaching might be, would love to see that. Now I've got, Catherine, I've got my Q&A box. Oh, here we go. Yeah, great, wonderful. We're getting some answers here. So it looks like we've got things like build trust and understanding and progress. Wonderful. Helping employees develop to their full potential. Third party to bounce ideas off of and get advice and mentorship. Wow, great answers here. Some really good, obviously you've had some experience with coaching. Helping others become more self-aware, providing consistent feedback for better results. Another set of eyes or opinions on a situation. Yeah, all of these things are benefits or value that can be brought by coaching. Partnered in self-reflection. Build capacities in others. Great stuff. So this is really what coaching can bring. And thank you all for your responses and for thinking about this. So from a quote from a magazine, Fortune magazine, talks about coaching as unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance. And it really is about the individual. It's helping them learn rather than teaching them. So coaching is not about teaching or giving advice, but really helping the client learn. Clients say coaching brings out their best by helping them focus, break down tasks, clarify their values. So a lot of benefit to the individual and also to the organization. Here's a little quote from HBR. The goal of coaching is the goal of good management, to make the most of an organization's valuable resources. I mean, just a quick example, a VP of marketing I work with, who was a brilliant strategist, but he was prone to making commitments that he couldn't really keep, or his organization couldn't keep. And as a result, he was creating distrust both internally and long-term with the customers. When that VP was able to see the problems his unconscious habitual behavior was creating, and then was able to change those habits, those ways of being that led to his making those kinds of commitments, it brought enormous value, not only to him, but for the people he worked with and his company as a whole. That's the kind of thing, then, one small example of the kind of thing that coaching, the value that coaching can bring. So just do another Q&A here, quick Q&A. What, in your opinion, does strong trust bring to an organization? So again, if you could go back to your window and type in some answers to that question. What do you think strong trust does for an organization? Higher levels of performance and engagement, makes stuff stick. Because I think this might be, yeah, here, great. Leveraging these This might be some of the feedback from the other one, but retention, here you go. Enhanced two-way feedback. Employees working at their full potential. Increases employee engagement and empowers employee engagement, hopefully fairness. Ability to be able to take risks, empowering, engaged. Get efficient use of people. Yeah. Helps with building and sustaining good relationships. Yeah, that's actually perfect. Because trust is part of any relationship and every relationship that we have. So if the relationship is going to be good, there has to be strong trust. Motivation, empowerment, safe environment to learn and ask questions. Those are the kinds of things, what you're pointing to here, are the kinds of things that really make a top performing organization. So which are great answers here. Thank you again for thinking about this. So what is trust? Again, I could ask that question as a question and answer thing, but in fact, I'm just going to, I get a lot of different answers and they would all be right. But what I'm going to do at this point is just cut to the chase and say that this is my definition of trust. It's the one that I have been using for a number of years. And as you can see, or for those of you who can't see a screen, I'll read it. Trust is choosing to make something you value vulnerable to another person's actions. It's essentially a synthesis of the definitions used by academic researchers who study trust in the fields of psychology and sociology and business and economics and neuroscience. They all use something similar to this. As one researcher said to me after reading this, he said, you know, it's kind of a user-friendly version of the definition we academics use. So I've tried to take it and kind of distill down the essence. So why this definition? Why does it matter? For me, it really gets to the heart of what trusting is about. It's being in some way vulnerable to others for the sake of achieving something together with others that we can't do alone. So trust allows us, and you had a number of great examples of the value of trust. It allows us in that position of being a little bit vulnerable. It allows us actually to connect and work well with other people. As I see it, when any of us as coaches uses our skill set to help our clients build, maintain, or if needed, restore damaged trust, we're not only helping the individual client or the client team, we're bringing the benefits of strong trust to the entire organization. So distrust is kind of the opposite of trust, obviously. It's the assessment that what is important to me is not safe with this person or in this situation. If you take a moment to think about that condition, the condition of distrust, you pretty typically see where this can cause all sorts of problems in an organization. In fact, distrust can be toxic. It can also be a good thing sometimes. I mean, it can be healthy to distrust people that we shouldn't distrust. And there are those people out there. But too much distrust can be toxic. It can kill innovation. It can destroy teamwork. It can sap energy and creativity. It's basically the anti-productivity drug. And I'm actually serious about using the word drug. It's a combination of chemicals in our bodies that creates a certain set of behaviors that causes all sorts of problems. One of the things I find so valuable about using coaching to strengthen trust at work is that it gets around the objection people often have that we don't have a trust problem here. Often when I first talk with someone, they'll say, oh, yeah, we don't really have a trust problem. But if I begin working with them over time, they begin to see that, yeah, oh, yeah, maybe we do have some issues around trust, and maybe we do need to address those issues. I should also say, sometimes even if the top leaders in a company don't see problems stemming from distrust, people 1 or 2 levels down usually do. So when I can come in and begin to work with them, and they begin to build stronger trust, it has a positive impact. Their teams, they and their teams become more productive. And top management then usually begins to notice. So we're going to do another poll, or actually another poll here. And this is the rating scale for this particular poll. There are 3 questions. Rate the level of trust between people in your company as a whole. And I'll bring up the poll here. Wait a minute now. Poll number 2. Yeah, you can see it here. So the first question is rate the level of trust between people in your company as a whole. So if you take just a quick moment to do that, we'll see what we've got here. Then we're going to ask a couple other questions. And the results are coming in here. Some moderate trust, moderate distrust are the two strongest answers here. I'm going to stop the polling because we've got to go into a couple others. The highest one is moderate trust, and that's great. Overall, moderate trust. But there's a number of you who responded, about 31% of you responded moderate distrust. A few said strong distrust. Only 3% said strong trust. So that's kind of an interesting thing there. An interesting response. Now, how about rating the level of trust that you have with your immediate supervisor? And by the way, this is all completely confidential. No one will know what your answer is. But what I'm seeing is pretty typical. It's coming up here with a little over half of you responding. We've got strong trust is a strong answer. Moderate trust is a strong answer. Moderate distrust, a few people, and then just a couple of you saying strong distrust. I'm going to close the poll now here for that. But I just want you to notice immediate supervisor trust, and that's important because that's the primary relationship we have in our organizations. So now we're going to go on to the third one here, the next one. Rate the level of trust in your company's or your organization's top leadership. And once again, I'll launch the poll and you can start responding. So this is trust in your company's top leadership. And again, it's spread out a little more in this time. We've got strong trust is still kind of low. Moderate trust is, a lot of you have moderate trust. Again, I'm going to end the polling here. So we've got moderate trust, 35% of you. Strong trust, 10%. Not sure, 10%. 29% moderate distrust. And strong distrust, 16% of you see strong distrust in your company's top leadership. And that's actually pretty consistent with what results I've gotten when I've asked people that over time. Strong trust, typically in the immediate supervisor, because that's your primary relationship. If you don't have strong trust there, people usually move on. It doesn't work for them to live in a situation where they really don't trust their immediate supervisor. So that usually changes one way or another. Either you move on, or for whatever reason, the supervisor moves on. Overall, company, moderate trust to moderate distrust. And not so much strong trust for the immediate supervisor, more moderate and sometimes distrust. So what does it mean to trust wisely? This is something that's kind of one of the things that I work with a lot with my clients. And one of the things that in most cases, so clients bring up this issue a lot. They'll tell me, wow, I'm struggling with some variation of, how do I deal with someone I have to work with and don't trust? And the first thing I often find needs to shift for them in their belief structure is that trust is an all or nothing proposition. Either I trust this person completely or not at all. So when they can begin with the help of coaching to trust someone conditionally, in some ways and not others, it's kind of a new and liberating idea for people. And this is where one element of my trust framework that I use becomes very useful. Rather than talking about trust as one big thing, I break it down into 4 different domains of trust: sincerity, reliability, competence, and care. And each one has a little bit different assessment. So when it comes to choosing to make something I value vulnerable to another person's actions, if my choices are either trust or don't trust, I'm kind of boxed in. But if there's, in that situation, if there's any question about the person's trustworthiness, my best choice is probably to not trust. However, when I make that risk assessment, I have a range of different choices. It's more likely I'll be able to find some way to trust that person. Just a quick example. I had a client recently who told me she couldn't trust one of her direct reports and didn't know what to do about it. She was really stressed out about this. So when I asked her what it was that she didn't trust, she said this man consistently failed to get work done on time. So in this model, that would be the domain of reliability. When we looked at his behavior in the other 3 domains, she realized she could trust him in the others. He was competent in his work, he spoke and acted with sincerity, and he seemed to have the team's and company's best interests in mind. So she went from a blanket, I don't trust him, to I don't trust his reliability, but there are ways that I can trust him. And more importantly, she was able to have a constructive conversation with him at that point about keeping commitments he made. Because she could start that conversation with something like, the last 3 times you committed to doing something, you didn't get it done on time. Rather than starting the conversation with something like, ooh, I don't trust you. That kind of conversation is not going to go anywhere fast. So, getting back to the coaching to build trust at work, here are some examples of areas in which coaching helps build trust. It can help leaders identify and practice, as it says, their trust-building behaviors for themselves and their teams. Much of the time when we just go about doing what we do and we think we're being trustworthy, but maybe some of our behaviors actually damage trust and we don't even know. A coach can help someone identify that, help a leader identify that, help people on a team identify that, and then switch to behaviors that actually build trust. Coaching can also provide leaders with opportunities to rehearse trust-critical conversations. Like this client that I just spoke about. Once she'd kind of identified, I need to actually talk with my employee about this issue of reliability, then we had the opportunity to rehearse that conversation so she was comfortable and at ease starting it, which allowed him to be more at ease and they could actually address the issue. Coaching supports trust building in specific relationships, and many times I've experienced in my work working with my client who doesn't trust that person over there, a peer, a manager, and so we were able to work out how that person can begin to build trust in some way with that individual. And finally, supporting good trust-building communication in general. I talked about wise trust, trusting wisely when it comes to making a choice to trust others. The flip side of that is being trustworthy ourselves, and coaching in this way and around trust building helps people also understand where they are blind to those behaviors that they have that damage trust that others might have in them. So at this point, I want to stop, take a moment to see if there are any questions that you have. I'll open my Q&A window again and go to the bottom. If you have a question at this point, I would be happy to answer it. In fact, what I'm going to do just briefly is stop sharing my screen so that you can, and turn on my video, I think. Yeah, so you can see me. And, one of the questions is, can you show the poll results? And I don't think I can, actually. I don't know quite how to use the technology. Other questions, though, that you might have, I would be happy to chat a little bit about those, answer them, having to do with coaching and trust in your organization. I'm wondering, Catherine, if oh wait, here we go. Here we go. Charles, what do you think causes our blind spots about practicing trustworthy behavior? Wonderful question. What do you think causes our blind spots about practicing trustworthy behavior? I think there are many causes for those blind spots. We come about them naturally in our lives. As we grow up and we learn to deal with the world, we learn particular or are conditioned into particular actions that work for us in some way, maybe when we're young, but as we move into, grow up and move into organizations, we're still practicing those behaviors that sometimes other people see as not trustworthy. So it's really, the key is not just what causes them, but how do we actually see them, begin to see them. And that's where coaching, I think, really comes to the fore, is helping identify those blind spots, that we didn't see, and then being able to shift that behavior. So thank you. That was a great question. Here's another one. What strategies would you suggest for supervisors trying to build trust with their staff? Yes. Okay. Another great question. So first of all, identify where the trust disconnects might be. And we have actually, I will at this point talk about some colleagues of mine who have a team trust assessment tool that you can use from the company is called Transcendence. And if you, we can send you that information a little bit later, but they have a survey instrument that you can use with the team that helps identify the areas where trust is not as high as it could be or should be. And then you can begin to work very specifically on those areas. Simply going in and saying, we have a trust problem, let's talk about it, often doesn't actually get to those issues. People get a little uncomfortable because, again, even talking about trust is asking people to be vulnerable in some ways that they may not be comfortable being vulnerable. But with a survey, you can see it there in front of you and say, oh, I see. We have some issues of trust in the domain of reliability or sincerity. So that's a great question, and thank you. It looks like we're actually at the ending time for our call today, and I don't want to, I want to honor the people who need to leave at this point. So I'm going to just quickly share my screen again and do one more thing before, oh, wait a minute, I've got to make this go away momentarily. So I just want to mention a book that I wrote about 10 years ago, The Thin Book of Trust, an essential primer for building trust at work. And it covers the framework and process that I use as a coach in working with clients, individuals, and teams. So it's available in print and digital format on Amazon, and it's also available in print format with quantity discounts directly from the publisher, Thin Book Publishing. So just to let you know about that. And then finally, I'm going to say thank you all for being on this webinar. Thank you for participating, for your thoughts and your questions. If you would like to reach out to Catherine, pathtotrust.com or their website. And if you would like, if you're welcome to email me with any questions, if we didn't get to questions, to your question and you have one, please feel free to email me, charles@insightcoaching.com. So what I will say at this point is I'll be happy to stay on for a few more minutes if people have more questions, and I can bring up the Q&A here again.